Okay, so today we're going to work on that second part of the assignment. So for this part of the assignment, if you read your assignment sheet, it says to choose 3 paintings to work with from that were created between 1800 and 1900. Like I told you last class, we're going to just do one. We're kind of running out of time, so we're just doing one. So let's say I choose Seurat here. What I'm trying to do is, first of all, determine the 5 major colors in the work. So you have to do a minimum of 5 colors. You can do more, because obviously every painting you're looking at will have many more colors than that. So you could do even 6 or 7 in your analysis. But the minimum requirement is 5. So what I have in Seurat's work here is a lot of green. There's some yellowish green, which looks a lot more yellow and warm up on the projector. So that would definitely be one of my colors. And what I'm trying to determine is how much of the composition is used up by this color, and then create essentially a study that would match the amount of each color. And it may look something like this. So this is not the piece for the Seurat I'm showing you. This is for a different painting. So you're trying to determine how much of each of these 5 or 6 or 7 colors are used, and then create a study that is proportionate to the amount of that color used. So for instance, I have a lot of this warm color, right? So that might be one of my largest compartments. I have a little bit of this kind of cooler greenish, bluish color back here in the background. So that might be a second one, a second large compartment. And then I want to look at what are the other colors used and in what proportion, and then make matching brackets of those colors in that approximate proportion, right? So we're not mathematicians, and I'm not asking you to create like a mathematical study for this. I'm just asking you to use your eyes and try to determine what colors use most in the composition, second most, third most, what are the most important colors, and to create a proportionate study of those colors. Does that make sense before I move on? Okay. So once you determine what those colors are, you have to mix them and create your studies. There's 2 options for this. This study is created on strips of Bristol paper, and then it's glued down. The strips are cut out and glued down. The final piece should be approximately 8 by 8 inches. So that's what I have here, with strips of color, much like your color wheel, that are first painted and then glued down. The second option is to work with the frog tape and not glue the colors down, but to paint them directly onto the board. The board you can use the scraps that I have here. So the board is black on one side, but you can use the white side of it and paint directly onto here. So you'll cut it to an 8 by 8 piece, and then you'll want to use the frog tape or this blue tape, but the frog tape works much better. So the frog tape is green. You can buy it at Home Depot, where they have all of the paint supplies, or you can use the blue tape. Now, if you do buy frog tape, you're more than welcome to use mine, because it is quite expensive, and we don't use a whole roll in this class. But if you end up buying it, buy the 1/2 inch one, not the 1.5 inch one. This is kind of cumbersome. But when you want to paint a straight line, you need some kind of tape, not masking tape, because masking tape is going to tear everything up. So what I did here is I applied the frog tape to create a border for my swatches of paint. So to do that, what I do is I put the frog tape down. So for instance, if I wanted to paint a next swatch next to this one, I need to protect this swatch. and I need to create a really sharp edge. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the tape down right there. And then in order to reinforce this, I'm just gonna put a little bit of acrylic gel medium over this line. And again, acrylic gel medium is something I have up here that you can use. Now this is kind of an extra step. I find it necessary because if I don't apply this, then sometimes the color bleeds behind the tape, but if you apply that acrylic gel medium, then it doesn't. And this is what it looks like. This is used very often in acrylic painting in lieu of water. So what I need to do is have that dry. It's not going to take very long. And then I need to mix up my color. So just for the ease of this demo, I'm going to pretend like my next color is just a blue. Which we know it's never just a blue. You'll probably need to mix something into it. But let me get a palette real quick. But for the purposes of this demo, let's just say it's blue. So I'm going to get my blue out here. I just realized I forgot to do something on here. So obviously I need to create another tape bracket. So let's say my blue is about this big, right? I need to put tape on the other side of my line. And I'm going to do something, the same thing. I'm going to just reinforce my line with putting a bit of gel medium over that. So now I know that my blue is going to just go inside this line, and I'm going to have a perfectly straight little swatch of blue there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for the gel medium to dry on this. Which doesn't take very long, and then of course this is great time to actually mix up my color. So if I were doing any mixing, again I'm doing it with a palette knife, and I have more palette knives up here than I did last time, so feel free to use them. And then once that acrylic gel medium is dry, I'm ready to paint my swatch of blue in there. And again, I'm trying to make this as flat as possible. Okay, now when this dries, and only when it dries, can I peel up this. So once it's dry, I'm going to peel that up, and I'm going to have this perfectly straight line there. Then what will happen when I want to paint my next colors, I'm going to do the exact same thing I did here, except that I'm going to take frog tape and I'm going to cover my blue line this time. And I'm going to cover on the other side of my blue line to create another straight line of color. Now if you do this method where you first paint strips of color and then you cut them out, you can obviously work a little bit quicker, because here there is a lot of time spent on drying, right? But here you can just paint swatches kind of like you did for the color wheel, just larger, wait for them to dry, cut them to the right proportions and paste them onto there with rubber cement. I'm showing you this because in problem 3, you're going to need to paint a straight line, and this is always how you paint a straight line. It takes a long time. And typically when I do any of these projects where, like for instance the color wheel, where you're asked to paint swatches, cut them out and paste them down, I get asked if it's acceptable if you work directly on the illustration board and paint directly on it. And yes, it is, as long as you do all of these steps to create a very straight line that is well crafted. Does that make sense? So either or with these is fine with me. But in the third problem, if you have to paint a straight line, this is how you're going to do it, with tape and the acrylic gel medium. Now, the other thing I wanted to let you know is that we're running out of time, as you may imagine. So I'm gonna basically need to cut the final project out for the semester. So what I'm gonna have you do is, you're gonna do problem 2 today. That's gonna be due by next class. And then you have the choice to decide either between problem 3, and I'll go over these at the end of class, which is a problem where you're creating a fourth of a design using the colors you did in problem 2. And then you're color copying that design to create a radial design. Or instead of that, you can do the color line dynamics project still using the colors you used here. But instead of doing this, you would be doing this project. So I'll go over the 2 options before class is over. I think personally color line dynamics would be easier. But if you've always wanted to work with a radial design, I am going to encourage this one. So you'll have options for this final one. But we are kind of running out of time, so there's no way we're going to be able to do them both. So yeah, that's what we're working on today. I'll come around, see how you're doing, and yeah.